Hey, welcome to the show, Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Okay, we've talked about your family's financial life. What does it take to help you get out of debt, manage money? Of course, part of what our life is to go to school, get educated. In today's world, student loans seem to be a reality, at least for many Americans that are attending college these days. The only way to be able to afford the costs that are associated with going to school is taking out a student loan. Now, in the world of college payment and making sure we're paying on time, there's multiple sources of income. Number one, I want you to always save if you can for your families when it comes to college and making sure those costs are there. But here's the other part of it. You might qualify for scholarships. We've talked about that in the past. It is never too late. There are scholarships that have deadlines that are the first of the year, that are the 15th of February and the 1st of September, all the way throughout the year. There's some wonderful websites these days. Early on, we used to talk about the websites because they were rare, hard to find. A lot of people didn't know they existed. Today, they're everywhere. There are tons of scholarship websites. Just go to your search engine, type in scholarships. I don't want to talk about that as much because everybody kind of knows about that. But what do you do when it comes to student loans? When you have a late student loan, what are some of the things that you can do in order to make sure that you're paying on time, in order to ensure that you don't get into trouble? There's one of the 40, if you are one of the 40 million consumers with student loans, that's more than 10% of Americans. Can you imagine that for just a second? It's about 12.5% to be exact, of Americans have a student loan. I mean, we're talking man, woman, and children here. Why is it that you thought it was a good idea to do something, in my opinion, not very well thought out? Now you might say, oh, Arif, you don't understand. Look, the bottom line is student loans and going to school and getting that degree is so 1990s. Oh, but Arif, today, look, if everybody has a college degree, they are not as important. You understand that? So it used to be that high school, oh, he went to the 8th grade. Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad. But she went to college. Oh, that's good. High school diploma used to mean something. And then suddenly, bachelor's degree. Wow, they have a bachelor's. That's a big deal. And then it was a master's degree. Oh, it must be a master's. That's the thing. Oh, now what's next? A PhD? Everybody's going to walk around and it's the favorite Chevy Chase movie where he goes, doctor, 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 doctor. So I'm not saying education is bad. I think it's a very important part of your life. But what I am saying is if you think college has something to do with success, financial or otherwise, you're wrong. It has to do with you expanding your knowledge. And even today, that's not the only place you can go to get it. Today, the internet is full of classes you can take that are concentrated, that are specific. Learning art history on something that you may never, ever use again so that you can get a degree in political studies. Does that matter? I don't know. Maybe. If you had a question about art history, do you go back to your minds? Go to the textbooks that are on your shelves? Or go to the internet to find the answer? Right? It used to be, I think I had the books until I think my last move where I would have just shelves of books from my old math classes and my old history classes. Today, those books are worthless, really. I mean, they're nice if you collect antiques, but for most people, it's not about that anymore, is it? So, you know how I stand when it comes, or where I stand when it comes to student loans. I think a lot of people took student loans for a degree in which their rate of return, their return on investment is not going to be what they thought it was, and they're stuck. Do I think college is bad? Of course not. I think you should learn for a lifetime. But be very careful when you make a decision for you or your family, for your husband or wife or your kids, to take money from your family budget or, believe it or not, from the future of your young student's life and give it towards a student loan. I just don't think that's the answer for most people. That burden is enormous. Now, what happens when it comes to the next step of your life, which is jumping into a student loan? Because it's easy to enroll in a program. In fact, we had one particular physician who has over $700,000 in student loans. $700,000. Now, that's nice. He's a physician. It's great. But what do you earn? What do you earn when you're a physician? $15,000 a month? Whoa, that's great. About a third of that goes away to taxes, about maybe $6,000. So now you're about $9,000 a month. Okay, hey, that's still not bad. About $7,000 goes to your student loans. Wait a second. You're right back at a Walmart manager's job, income. How about that? 10, 12 years of your life so that you can earn the same. Oh, but Arif, it goes up. There's a lot more money that you could earn over your lifetime. True. But you start off at, age 30, 35, or 40 by the time you really begin to make any real money because, you go to school, you have to take classes, you have to go and pay your dues across society. You do things where you're standing and working hard. And then surprise. So be very careful. I love the fact that people are getting educated. I love the fact that school and college is available to people more and more these days. But what do you do when you mess up? When your job doesn't pay? When you can't afford the payment for a student loan? Or you just got a new job, but it isn't what you thought, and you still have other bills. Of course, you have to eat, food, shelter, clothing. Those things matter. Imagine that. Wow. What do you do? So there's something called deferment. Let me get into that here because it's a period of time in which the repayment of your student loan principal and interest is temporarily delayed. Now, it happens a lot when people graduate. They give them 6 months to get started, 6 months to lay the foundation of their life. Important. No big deal. We get that. You can also go into deferment at later times in your life. Did you know that? You can ask for a deferment if you get laid off again or if you have another position, but you have to be involved a little bit in that because that delay period of time doesn't always last forever. So a forbearance comes into play. What is a forbearance? You may be able to stop making payments or even reduce your monthly payment for up to 12 months. Now, the interest continues to accrue. That doesn't change. So if you missed a student loan payment, it will impact your credit. And as a student loan payment, if it's not made, who collects it? Is it your local bank? Is it a guy named Lenny with a baseball bat? Or is it the IRS? It's worse than both of those combined. It's the IRS. They come knocking on your door. They cancel. Did you know they go after your licenses? If you have a contractor license or a nursing license, if you're somebody who has a driver's license, a chiropractic license, an architectural license. Do you know that if you don't pay, the IRS cancels those or suspends those and terminate? Wait, that's the source of income. How am I supposed to eat dinner and at the same time not be at what? That's how they do it. So be very careful that if the process of what you're doing, you get in bed with the devil, if you will. I don't know, I guess it is. Look at what the IRS did to the conservative Tea Party groups. You don't have to agree with them, but is free speech under fire? Yeah. And when you have a very militant presidential administration and a group of people that decided to punish those and to use the Justice Department and the IRS to go after you, that goes to show you the power. You can research it. It's everywhere now. And it goes to show you the power of the IRS and why that is important because you just got into bed with them. And you might think, oh yeah, I don't like those Tea Party people. Well, today that's the administration is in power, is the one that doesn't like the Tea Party. Well, what if the Tea Party gets into power? You think that you just gave them the power. And today it's your guy that's in power, so you like it. But tomorrow, if it isn't your guy in power, you don't like it. You have to be very careful. If you're giving the government or people in charge, if you give them power, life changes quickly, doesn't it? You have to be very careful if you're going to be walking into that danger zone. Give the power to somebody, you may go backwards. So what do you do? If you're going to forbear these loans, how do you decide? Well, what's the difference between deferment and forbearance? Well, we went over it as well. Let's walk through that again. The payment of your student loan and principal is temporary delayed. That means in the deferment, principal and interest is delayed. A forbearance says I don't have to make the payment, but the principal and interest continue to accrue. And so what do we do when it comes to the difference between the two? Well, as a college graduate, you typically have 6 months grace period. We talked about that. After graduation, before your first loan payment is due. After that, now what? If you're unemployed, you can explore other repayment options. You can now begin to defer it. You can say, now I'm going to defer it for an additional up to 3 years. That's the total amount, period. What do you do when you're backwards, when your back's against the wall? So I want you to be very careful. Here's what I think is one of the best ways to go about this. You may have got yourself into trouble. You may quietly talk and go, oh my goodness, I can't believe what I did. A lot of people get into that conversation where they feel like they were misled that their degree was going to give them something that it just didn't do. So, what is that process? I want you to look at the income-based repayment option. Okay, the income-based repayment, IBR. The IBR allows you an option to take your income, you put it into a formula, and then the IRS charges you a percentage. It's a formula based on how many kids are in your family, where do you live. So there's food, shelter, clothing that's put in there. And then basically take your expenses out. Then what's left, that's the formula that they put together. And they say, okay, you can afford $213 a month. Now you might say, well, the interest alone, my student loan payment is $750 a month. The interest is $250 a month. So you're supposed to pay $750. The interest is, let's say, $250. And wait a second, why does the income-based repayment plan say that I'm only paying $213 a month? Because that is the formula. If you make those payments on time, and you do so for 20 or 25 years, I'll get to the other program in a minute. Then after that period of time, whatever's left, maybe it's grown in value, maybe you never really paid even the interest that it was accruing, it doesn't matter. Then whatever's left is forgiven by the US government, i.e. your taxpayers. So I don't care where you're working, if you're working at Starbucks, if you're working at Allstate, if you're working at Walmart, you need to thank the person in front of you in line who comes to see you or spend money, because they're the ones that paid for your student loan interest. They're the ones that laid out their tax dollars so that you could go to college. So you better be grateful to those around you. It's much different than just going, I deserve, the government paid. Who's the government? Do you think John Boehner? Do you think Paul Ryan? President Obama? Nancy Pelosi? Who do you think is the government? It's none of those people. Those folks are fine. Their kids will never pay to go to college beyond a very small amount. They'll never take out student loans. Those kids, those people, their children will have wonderful vacations, great lives. It's the other taxpayers, the middle class people that are working, who go to work, pay some of their taxes so that you can party on Friday. I mean, so that you could actually go to school, right? So the student loans, folks, doesn't just come from air. I know that politically sometimes people think that. They're like, oh, it's the government. It is not. It is individuals. All right, so what do? You got a student loan deferment. You can wait. The government pays your interest. Basically, it just doesn't accrue. They take it from their left pocket, drop it into the right pocket, and they call it paid. Can you say Social Security? Very similar to how they are managing that. Now, private lenders are different. President Obama outlawed private lenders. In other words, there are no private lenders anymore that are allowed to issue new loans in the student loan arena. Did you know that? What? Yeah. In a capitalist society, if a company says, I want to invest in you, Joe, I want to invest in you, Mary, I'm going to give you money so that you can attend UC whatever or Cal State whatever. Nope, sorry. Isn't that weird? Don't you think that's a little weird? Of course, I'm oversimplifying it, but that's it. That's the bottom line. You want to go to a private school and a private institution wants to give you money and lend it to you? Sorry, you can't do that. Tough luck. What? Yep, that's the way it goes. Now, if you have a private loan, maybe you're in your 30s or 40s, private lenders have different terms and conditions for the deferment, but typically either your interest will accumulate and then be added to the back end, or sometimes you still have to make interest-only payments. You might be stuck in that scenario where there's a portion of it there's a little bit of a plan. But can you still request forbearance? Yes, you can. It's usually limited to a period of time. Remember how I said 3 years is the ultimate, but it's 1 year increments. Don't forget that. You don't want to go much more than that. And if you're going to get that 1 year period of time to borrow, that's the time you buckle down. You get a second or a third job. I had 3 jobs, right? That's what you do. I remember trying to go to my dad and mom asking for money for college. They said, well, you know what? We didn't quite save that much for you. Okay, well, but you'll always have a place to live. You'll always have food. I said, great, that's all I need. The rest is I'm going to do what I can. It's what you do. Ideally, you're going to want to just repay the student loans as quickly as you can. Deferring a government loan is your best option because the interest will be paid for by the government, other taxpayers. But in the worst case scenario, remember this. If you're going to defer it and the interest is going to be added to the back end, all it's doing is delaying the pain, and you're going to have to find some way, somehow, to pay that back. The interest on it, I don't know, 6%. In today's market, it's pretty high. In the big scheme of things, over the next 25 or 30 years, it's actually quite low. But it's an unsecured loan, right? Your student loans, what are they going to... I'm going to repossess your diploma, sir. Take that knowledge right out of your head. Nothing for you unless you pay back. There's nothing they can do. So when they transferred it to the IRS, suddenly it hits your credit. Suddenly it becomes this institution that can go after you, and they've done it. We've seen it. So be very careful when you get in bed with the devil. We're going to be back in just a minute as we continue with some of the student loan ideas and the options and the plans and things you can do as you're planning for 2016, as we're starting to see. You have to send your intent off to certain colleges. You have to start looking. I know friends that are out there shopping, if you will, taking weekend trips, looking at schools and seeing what their senior in high school has to offer and what the colleges have to offer them. We'll cover that and a whole lot more when we continue. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. We'll be right back. Hey, welcome back to the show. Total Financial Solutions, Safer Money Hour. Arif, Halaby, Jeff, Gerard. Every week at this time, we're talking about your family's finances. We jumped into student loans a little bit. Look, you always have my opinion on it. You know that I'm not a fan of them. You know that it takes away from your future, and you're significantly hampering your success. If you were to come to me and if we were to do the math and at the end of the day we could quantify everything, and you were to say it took me 6 years to get my bachelor's degree, or even 7 years just to get a bachelor's degree, but at 7 years and 7 minutes I have 0 student loans, all bet in your future, even though you had to sacrifice and live in your parents' garage or take 3 jobs, or your family didn't see you as much. I get it. If at the end of all of that, 7 years and 7 minutes, I can bet you will probably have an enormous difference in your financial life. In fact, I would bet it would be measurably different. In fact, the difference between lower middle class and bordering on wealthy. Wealthy would be the 7 year to get my college degree, because many things happen. One, the perseverance, the person you became in the process is very important to your success. Number 2 is you're not being burdened by that $200, $300, $400, $500 a month student loan. Here's what doesn't happen. You realize when you have to pay back a $500 a month student loan, it's not $500 you have to earn. Do you get that? It's not $500. You have to earn about $750, maybe $800. You have to pay your payroll tax. You have to pay your income tax. You have to pay, and then what's left? So you have to do $600, $700, $800 or more worth of work, effort, labor, just to pay off $500 in student loans. Folks, that is pretty big. So follow me on this. What happens if you die? You have student loans. You pass away. Are your parents burdened with them? Does it attach to your estate? Think about this for just a second. Federal student loans do not transfer to another person. So it isn't like a credit card. If husband and wife get married and she has student loans and he has student loans and one of you were to pass away, it doesn't automatically go to the other and now you're stuck paying your spouse's student loans. Your relatives are supposed to notify the loan servicer. They're going to ask for a death certificate, most likely in some forms. But once it's all done, the loans generally will be canceled rather quickly. But in the case of disability, now what happens if somebody's disabled? If they're disabled, permanently and totally disabled, of the student borrower, federal student loans can often be discharged. But there's a special process to make this happen. So you're going to have to go to the Department of Education. They have a special website specifically for this. You go through a process. You'll have to have a doctor sign a form that says, yes, this person's disabled. So don't expect it to just happen overnight. It's a few steps.
Well, now here we're thinking federal student loans aren't dischargeable. Well, they are. You just have to die or become disabled.
Oh, that's easy.
I mean, geez, look at the options there. My goodness. You're talking about that number being much higher than that number is that we sign our name to. I think that escapes a lot of people, especially when they're trying to budget in they're factoring these 2 things into their life on a future budgeting basis. Number 1, they're working off of the number that's in front of them, not the taxable amount of money they have to earn in order to make that payment. And then the second thing is, if you don't have to pay today, What a great deal.
Right.
Why not do it? Hey, 5, 10 years, I can defer these things? Oh, my goodness. A lot of people are buying into that lie, and I just hope that they're realizing what they're getting into. And I think if they really did, they wouldn't sign their name to 5 and 6 figures in student loans. It just wouldn't happen.
You know, your student loans, if from a private person, right, a private company, they are not under any legal requirements or obligations to discharge your loan. So it's not the same as a federal student loan. Because the federal student loan, there's no one individual that loses the money. It's the government. Governors come in. Look at what Gray Davis did, right? The amount of money Gray Davis, the governor of this great state of California, the amount of money he gave away to the unions was enormous. To the jailers union, the corrections officers union, some of the street Caltrans, just like huge percentage of increases in pensions and all of that. And then he left. Right, he got it voted out, actually recalled. Hasn't happened in a long time. Got recalled, and then but did everything he put in place. Most of those provisions are still there. So when a governmental bureaucrat comes into place, and they pass these laws, and by the power vested in me, by you taxpayers, I can spend your money not just today, but for the next decades into the future. That's different. A private student lender will say, "Well, wait a second, you have my money." So either they will charge you a higher interest because they know some of you are going to die or become disabled, or they're going to have to go after your estate. And if you don't have an estate, well, then I guess there's nothing left. You can't get blood from a turnip, as they say.
Here's something else to consider. I think a lot of people are forgetting about this part is Parent Plus loans. You have two bodies involved. And typically, why does a Parent Plus loan ever come into play? Well, one, probably the student, the child, couldn't qualify for any more loans, or they couldn't qualify for any at all. So the parents come in and even grandparents in some cases, come in and they take on part of this burden. And now you've got an extra set of lives, potentially, being affected by these student loans and the payments associated with that. And then what happens if you pass away? That's going to be kind of a convoluted situation. I think you should really factor in, at some point, at least have the conversation to put a life insurance policy in place in case somebody passes away. That could be a very quick, inexpensive way to take care of some of these loans. So that, I mean, hey, do you want to take a bet that you're going to go up against the government and say, oh yeah, you know what, I read somewhere online that this loan was discharged if somebody became, if they were impaired or if they died. Okay, well, that's nice. If you want to go and spend the time doing that or hire an attorney to interpret the law, okay, fantastic. But if you have the means to pay it off, it might be one of the quicker ways to take care of that.
Yeah, so think of it this way. Most of the time, remember, if it's a federal loan, the dollars just go away. Often they're called Sallie Mae or Parent Plus loan. Now, if you pass away, because the student is not on it, so if a parent passes away, then the loan can disappear. Even though the student's still alive, even though the student's working, even though the student's doing their job, the parent passed away, the student, the loan themselves, because the student's not on it, is often forgiven. So not bad. What I would do is look at a grandparent who's pretty ill and old, and I would have them borrow to the hilt on a student plus loan, parent plus loan, right? And then, hey,
we'll
8 years left in the
government,
world.
we got lots of money, right? So
just remember, it's all about their money, those rich people. All of you want to be them, right? I love it. Everybody wants to drive the nice car, but when that guy with the nice car comes along, you're like, oh, wait a second, I don't like you. You know those people with the hair and the loan and the car. All right, here we go. Think of it this way. There are sometimes a personal loan that you get for schools, because it's different, right? Sometimes people will take out credit card loans, and they call it, oh, it's for my student loans. But really, the origination of the loan came from a credit card from a parent, or home equity line of credit for a parent. We've seen that often. We have seen it come from a 401k loan of a parent. So they might have money for their retirement account, and they pulled money out, and now it has to be paid back monthly. Those things can take place when you're trying to, and in fact can hurt when you pass away, or if you don't pay your loan. It doesn't have any provisions. Even though you use the dollars to pay for college, you're not under the college rules or the provisions, right? So that's a little bit weird.
Well, one of the other things you can look at, and I think it kind of flies under the radar a lot because it's a little bit more complex the way you have to build it. But a cash value life insurance policy with, now let me just say this disclaimer here, properly built high cash value life insurance policies can sometimes be the thing that you can use to pay off these student loans. And here's why. Let's say you were to contrast it with a 401k or any type of workplace plan where you can take out a loan, right? You have to have, number one, enough money to take out a loan, and then you have that $50,000 or that 50% cap, whichever is lower on what you can take out. So if you have $100,000 in your 401k, in this example, you could take out $50,000. The math's the same. If you have $200,000 in your 401k, you can only borrow, under current law, about $50,000.
Yeah.
And then you have to pay that back with interest. But a life insurance policy, you have a lot more leeway, a lot more flexibility. You don't have that cap on what you can borrow. Now, the company that holds your policy, they may have a cap on what you can borrow, but it's typically a high number based on your cash value.
Yeah, a much higher number. Remember this, let me back up here on a Federal Plus loan. It can be discharged not just on the death of the student, but on the cosigner. In many of these loans, a Parent Plus loan, you have a husband and wife, and they'll cosign for the child. So that is important because if you're the fourth or fifth child to go to college, and there still are these other loans outstanding, it may take another cosigner to come on board. Otherwise, the parents might be maxed out and the fourth child doesn't get to go to college. So how do you ensure? Well, if the child passes away or the parents, while the primary borrower for a plus loan for undergraduate minor students is usually the parent, when you have grad school, because remember at the beginning I'm saying, hey, everybody has a high school diploma these days. Everybody has a bachelor's degree these days. So you're going to need a graduate degree just to get in the door and to be looked at differently. Well, students in professional degree programs can also take out plus loans, but they're going to need a cosigner if their credit isn't strong enough. And that is important because if that person passes away, the cosigner, so I want the cosigner to be your grandmother or your grandfather, right? I mean, just talking strategically here. Mm-hmm. And if they pass away, the loan is forgiven, federal loans. You have to send in the death certificate. It's going to take a few weeks. You may have to still make payments so your credit doesn't get messed up. You'll have to see if it's worth it. I would still send in the payment because they're going to refund it eventually anyway. But most obligations still stand when it comes to private loans. The death of the cosigner doesn't change the obligation of the primary borrower in private loans. So typically if a cosigner dies, the loan isn't affected at all. As long as the payments continue to be made, it's fine. You're still responsible for the payments. The role of the cosigner is to serve as an insurance policy, if you will, for the lender if you fail to make it, not the other way around. So if you're making regular payments for a period of time, the lender may decide that because the loan has already been issued and there's no indication that you're in a worse risk, they just keep staying forward. But should the lender want to press for payment, death does not relieve the cosigner of his or her responsibility to pay. So if you are in default and you can't reach an agreement, the lender can seek funds from the cosigner's estate. Remember, we were just saying that. Though there's a time limit, right, before it's closed. The lender in a private loan scenario can and usually does, especially if it's big money. If it's a few $1,000s, they may not, because the attorney's fees will cost way more than the plan. But if you're talking about 10, 15, 20,000 graduate degree level stuff of 50, 100, 200,000, you will have a knock on the door, my friends.
Yeah, you better believe they're going to come after that kind of money.
How do you protect yourself, Jeff? You brought it up a little bit here just a second ago. If you have a child that you are responsible for, and it's a private loan or a loan in which the dollars will not be forgiven upon the passing of that person, and you want me to take out a loan for you, I would require a life insurance policy.
I think that's the way to do it because now you're basically protecting yourself in these what-if scenarios. Now, look, we've spelled out a few different ways where you might be relieved in a scenario, whether it's death or disability. But what if you live? How about taking out a loan that you plan on paying back, which I think that's the right mindset to take on, is that you plan on paying this money back if you borrow it. Because like Arif said, it's not just, the government's going to pay for it. Someone else is going to absorb it. No problem. Okay, well, look. This is a loan that you took out, and it's going to take you the better part of your beginning working years at least to pay some of this back. Should you pass away, I think this life insurance plan can be some of the fail-safe out there. Now, look, there are two different ways to go about it. Life insurance, just a quick 101. There's term life insurance, which is basically you rent a bag of money. There's no equity in it. It's kind of like car insurance, but on your life. If you don't crash, they don't pay.
And it's very inexpensive.
Yeah, it's
usually,
very
right?
inexpensive. Yeah, that's right.
And there's a term period, right, Jeff? So in other words, if I have a 20-year loan, then don't get a 30-year life insurance policy.
Yeah, you might want a 20-year term.
Yeah, if you have a 10-year loan where the loan will be paid off in 10 years, then you get a 10-year life insurance policy. Very inexpensive, very easy to handle. It's not an issue as far as worrying about paying huge amounts.
And I think that should be part of the conversation when you're talking about paying these dollars back. As you say, look, maybe the payments are projected to be $300 a month, and then maybe for $30 a month you can buy the amount. Or maybe $50, whatever it is. You have to run some quotes, but I would have it be commensurate or equal to the amount that you've borrowed. So if you have $50,000 in student loans, you might want a $50,000 life insurance policy. Term life, inexpensive. Make that part of what you're paying, not paying back to the school, of course, or to the university or the institution, or the loan company in this case, but you'd be paying into a policy. And just know that it has a job to do. It's part of the equation. It's protection, kind of like anything else you would want to insure.
Yeah, the process of building a financial plan is also remembering to have these backup plans. You've heard me talk about student loans as I don't know if it's a conspiracy of one political party or another, but it's to be a prisoner for decades to come. I mean, do you understand what that is? You've been in debt before. You know when those phone calls come. Heck, if you're young, you know what it's like to have to pay an electric bill, and every darn month those electric bills come and go, and water bill.
That's right.
Imagine something that takes nearly 1 or 2, 1.5 of your paychecks. So we're working on trying to relieve it, and I know nobody wants to pay an extra $20 or $40 a month, but these term life insurance plans are very inexpensive. They should make the beneficiary whoever is responsible for your student loan. If it's your mom or your sister or your cousin, whoever it is that's responsible for it, that particular person should be the one that's the beneficiary of it. And you're the one that should pay for it. Now, you might say, if my kids, I get it. I know, I'm a parent. Some of you are a bit more enabling or I don't know, codependent, whatever fancy psychology 101 word we want to use. And I might be in there with you on some of those. So you might say, my little daughter or son can't afford that extra. No problem. Then you can make the payment. So you can insure the life of your daughter or son. You can be the beneficiary, and you can be the owner. That means you control everything. The only thing is the insured, or the life in whose the policy is based on, is the kid, the student. You own it. You got to make the payment, and you're the beneficiary. And now you can keep that forever if you want. You don't have to give it to the kids. You don't have to cancel it when the student loan. I mean, you can keep it if you want. So it gives you that flexibility, it gives you that freedom. We're going to be back in just a minute as we continue with Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. I'm Arif Halaby along with Jeff Gerard at Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour on your place for news, talk, and information. That's AM 1220 KHTS. Hey, welcome back to the show. Total Financial Solutions Safer Money Hour. Arif Halaby, Jeff Gerard. What do you do if you're going to have 2, 3, 4 kids in college at the same time? How do you structure your financial life to be able to cover this? Well, keep in mind that we're going to go off of a couple of assumptions. One of those is that you want to spread out equally the dollars, the credit, the savings, the income, whatever you have determined to set aside for college for each of the children. So if you have 3 kids that are going to be in college, whether they're all at the same time or over the next 5 or 8 or 9 years, how do you determine how many dollars each child gets? Well, I think part of what we've understood in the past is the word fair is not really a good word to use. It's an F word, right? I say it's the F word. What do you mean? Because it's used to control and manipulate people. Just like offended. Offended and fair are the same two things. If I want to put you down, if I want to squash your free speech, or if I want to control you as a young daughter or young man, I'm going to say that it's not fair for you to do this. I'm offended if you said that. And immediately I shut you down. There's no conversation. There's no free speech anymore. There's no possibility for your child to go off to school when you say, honey, it's not fair that I have to spend more money for you to go to school than your older brother. Right? When your older brother was going to school, we had a lot more debt. We just had a new house, or we just had a lost job. So I'm not going to pay for you because I didn't pay for your brother, your oldest brother. Is that the right way to go? What I think is each and every year, you should reevaluate where you are financially. If today you're in a spot where you can afford to send your child to school with X amount of dollars, then that's the way it is. If next year it's less, then next year it's less. One of the biggest challenges, Jeff, that we have seen is when somebody comes to me and they have an only child, I don't know, let's say a daughter. When she was 2 years old, I promised her that I would pay for college wherever she wanted to go.
Yeah.
That's great. Could you promise that there wasn't going to be a recession? Or you weren't going to lose your job?
Yep.
Or that housing prices weren't going to do what they did? Or milk wasn't going to be as expensive as it is? Or eggs? Or on and on and on? Of course you couldn't. Now I understand you gave her your word and all of that. It's all honorable and decent. And at the moment you said that, you committed and expected to maintain that promise. But you couldn't control the other things in your life. So I don't know if it's not if it's not the right thing to say, to promise that way back then. I don't know if it's the wrong thing to ever promise or lead a child onto that. And if so, then okay, sorry. What I meant, my daughter, was with good intentions.
Well, I think it's wrong to back your family into that financial position, because what have we seen? We've seen people say, hey, Jeff, Arif, what do you guys think? I think I'm going to take out all of my deferred comp money or all of my retirement money and pay for my daughter's college. And I go, what? And I can't say that because I don't want to crush somebody because they have an idea, but there's a reason why you put money in a retirement account. It's for retirement. There's a reason why you put money in a college savings account, because it's for college. And you don't mix and match the two, because each dollar has a job. So what I think you can do in the beginning, if we're catching you with this program early enough in your life that you're making these commitments or these assumptions that you can always put yourself out there so definitively, I'm always going to make sure that my daughter or my son gets through college. What I think you can do is commit to a dollar figure each and every month or every year that you would set aside for college. And that way, you have a bit of a parachute. Look, Susie or Jimmy, I saved as aggressively as I possibly could. I did what I could with your college savings, and now here's what it's grown to. Here's what we set aside, and you can go to college from this. Or, hey, it's a great head start to your undergraduate degrees. It's a great start to paying for the first 2 or 3 years of your community college. Maybe the conversation changes from, I want my daughter to go to Harvard or Stanford, or darn it, she's going to an Ivy League school. Okay, fantastic. But if things change, don't encumber your family. Don't put them in a position where now you have to mortgage your entire life to the hilt to make that promise come to fruition 18 years ago.
And part of that process is determining that you're going to pay for a part of it. And I think if you walk into the door today with college costs the way they are, I don't think you can ever commit 100% to something that is so far in the future. Very few people have that kind of money. But I think if you commit, like Jeff was saying, to a portion each month, we know what we have today. We know what our debt is today. We know what we can save today. That's a much more fixed number. And I think it's fair in your life, if we have to use the F word, to share the wealth. If you have 3 children and you can save $300 a month, then each of them receive $100. And that's right that your 10-year-old is not going to have as much as your 2-year-old, because your 10-year-old is closer to the college age than your 2-year-old.
Yep.
So people will say, well, I want to spread it out and I want to square root, and then I got to make sure I factor in the time and you can make it difficult. You can make it complicated. Of course, it's up to you. But I believe that if you put in place from an early age that your children are going to have to work while they're in school, or they're going to have to go to a community college and then go to school, or that they can spend all of their money their first 2 years at whatever school they want to go to, and then the rest is up to them, right? You can work that in, but I think putting in a responsibility so that they have some skin in the game, you've heard that, They have to have some skin in the game. If they don't value school. Who values something? Take a look around. Look, frankly, Halloween was a wonderful time, but look at the parties. All right, we have a neighbor not too far from us that had 4 college girls that live there. Wonderful party, I'm sure. But they were probably not spending the money that they earned. Just my guess, because they all attend colleges. They're not inexpensive schools. The amount of alcohol that was flowing was not minimal. Do you understand that people care a little bit more when they invest a little bit more? I don't know. Maybe, do you not feel the same way?
I think that's a great point. And something else I want to add to this is, and especially I can speak from, I think, directly from the ground here, is I have 5 children, and not one of them is exactly the same. They'll each have different things that they want to do. One of my kids is going to be an attorney. He's already the family representative, and I already have to budget for that in my mind, that, okay, this kid's going to law school, and whatever we have to do to get him there. I say that tongue-in-cheek, but it's kind of the running joke in the family. I have another son that wants to work and have a business. I have another son that wants to be in the NBA. So it's kind of like, go where their heart is, where their passions lie. Don't make them think that they have to do something, and then now you've got this thing in your head that you've committed to, that everybody has to go. Look, do I think college is important? Of course. It shows, because look, when you're trying to go get a job, you don't have any work history, so how do you get work history without a job? Well, the things that you do in your younger years through your education, then higher education, tells future employers, look, you didn't have to go to college. You paid to go to a job, and then you had to show up there every day, and no one dragged you out of bed to go there. So you paid your money or spent your parents or borrowed it to get into that university or that school, and then you made it happen. You started and you finished something. Now we're going to give you a chance. So I think that's essential in every young person's life in some degree. So take that with a grain of sand, or take it to heart. But if your child is not ready for college, maybe they want to go to a trade school and something less expensive or cost intensive, but still helps them achieve some of the same things from an employment standpoint.
You know, part of the managing the money part of your life is to realize that you can take on the debt, and then you said, "Oh, I'm going to give it over to my kids. When I retire, I'm going to give it over to my kids, and they're going to make the payment because by then they should be established in their job." Do you realize that never happens? I mean, maybe you're the 1 in a million or 1 in 100,000, but we have thousands of people that come through my office every year, and those people, when they sit down, they all committed to that or planned on that happening one day. What I'm good at, generally speaking, is seeing patterns of behavior, and I can tell you generally in a pattern of behavior, everybody's had wonderful intentions. They were 52 and they took out student loans for their children that were 20-year student loans. That means you're 72. Oh, but when I retire, my kids are going to, or when they graduate, or a year after. That doesn't happen very often. So if your kids are going to make extra payments, and often they do, they might get a great job. That's wonderful. They're going to make extra payments. That's great. I want those extra payments to be paid where? To you. Your student loan. Thanks for listening. Arif, Halaby, and Jeff Gerard. Every week at this time, stay tuned at the top of the hour on AM 1220 KHTS.